What's up, world? Good morning and welcome to another edition of the RemiX Morning Show, a special Malcolm X birthday morning show, RemiX edition, Black Power Media. What's up, family? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Baba Lukman already. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Baba Luke. Wow. Oh, wow. I didn't even see that. Joint chilling over there.
Hey.
Presenting Abdus.
Right.
Abdus X. What y'all want to do?
Go.
Speaking of which.
Don't tell him to change his name again. Don't do it.
Oh, wow. Right. Well, let's do this. Let's do this right. First of all, shout out to Sister May, keeping us in check, running things in the background. And as she often reminds us, my name is Jared Ball, as I said. Good morning. We are also joined by Jackie and Abdus Lukman, or Abdus X. Kamal K. Franklin in the lower square. And to his right, Burn It Down with Kim Brown is joining us back again.
More
and
fire.
I am Malcolm X.
Act like y'all know. The more the words that come out. Yes.
You saying that's not Wakanda? That's Malcolm?
All the way Malcolm today. No Wakanda, baby.
Yeah, so we do have a special edition for Malcolm's birthday today. We're going to shout out and tribute him and some other comrades, of course. We have some special guests coming through, a whole day set up, or a whole morning set up at least, to get your boom bap breakfast going on this Malcolm X morning. But I wanted to ask you all, before we get anything, I think it's really good that one of the things we're going to do today is have this sort of companion discussion to our Blacklash Womanhood panel of a couple months ago with a discussion of manhood here on the RemiX, because I went down a little rabbit hole last night of watching the, speaking of Browns, the Kwame Brown versus Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. Woo! And we have,
man. They don't want it with Steven Jackson out here, man. What are they doing?
Fill the rest of us in.
So for those who may not be paying attention, so I happen to still be living in DC when Kwame Brown was drafted to the Wizards by Michael Jordan.
Number one, by the way.
Number one. This is about 20 years ago now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he didn't do well. His career just, didn't go as planned.
Well, let's hold on. Now he does have some NBA championships, but it's not because he was out there putting up double doubles.
Right, because he was riding the bench on the Lakers.
Right.
Because he sure didn't win him in DC. Good Lord knows he didn't win him while he was in DC. But what apparently happened was, since the podcasting career of Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson has taken off, one of the things that they brought up in a recent discussion was the failing and the shortcoming of Kwame's career, brought his name into the discussion, and he has had a vigorous set of responses, which I actually appreciated, because, and I'll just say, one of his points was that I really like, and then Kim, you could come back and add a little bit, because it seems like you've been following, at least you went down a little bit of the rabbit hole I went down. But one of the points that I really appreciate that he made, that I'm saying relates to what we're going to talk about in our next segment about manhood and Malcolm X, is that he was calling out Stephen A. Jackson of ESPN, Stephen A. Smith of ESPN, Stephen Jackson and Matt Barnes of the All the Smoke podcast, but particularly Stephen A. Smith, for saying you and all of those like you have made careers and millions of dollars of being supposed men talking about boys, teenagers, talking about black boys and teenagers for white people and white audiences and white money, destroying their lives in many cases for your career. And I thought that was a very interesting take, because his point was, you all were talking about me. Remember, I came into the league at 17, doing something none of you could do. And then you have the nerve to talk about what my career was and what not. And then if people know a little bit of the background, while he was here in DC, Jordan was very, very hard on this young man, talking bad about him in public, talking bad about him in front of the fans on the court. In fact, Abe Polian removed Michael Jordan from ownership or leadership, in part because of the way he treated players and Kwame Brown. So it's very interesting to hear that take aside from all the pettiness and all this stuff, I mean, he had some good one-liners from Matt Barnes, calling him Becky with the good hair.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? He's talking about Derek Fisher. He was saying Derek Fisher. He was bringing Derek Fisher into the mix somehow, because I know Derek Fisher allegedly had an affair with Matt Barnes.
Well, from what I understand, it wasn't really an affair. He got with Matt Barnes' ex later in life. But so he did was saying
way too much.
Exactly. I agree. But my point was just the mental part, and the point about commercial media and the way older Black men are paid a lot of money to talk very negatively about younger Black men and boys, in fact, for a lot of money. And so anyway, I just thought that was an interesting. I was going to try to make use of the rabbit hole I went down for as a segue into what we're talking about this morning. So anyway,
I also like the fact that he took the field Negro position. You know what I'm saying? He was out on his tractor talking about his land. You know what I mean? He said, y'all sitting behind the desk. I'm out here with these dirty boots on my land. You know what I mean? Doing that work. So I appreciate the fact that he understands, as Malcolm said, that land is the basis of power. You know what I mean? So he wasn't one of these jackasses that spent all his money. You know what I mean? He took what he had and he invested in the land. So shout out to him for that.
Like Kwame Brown is not out here struggling, y'all. I mean, maybe he didn't sign like $100 million contract, but he ain't Paul. Okay, he probably sitting on a nice chunk of change.
Eating cat food.
Right. And there's something interesting. I think I appreciate you bringing this up, Jared, because Kwame Brown drafted #1 by the Washington Wizards, and then we had another young man from the DC area, Markelle Fultz, who was drafted, real high and had like a sort of like a mental breakdown. And then I'm thinking about Delonte West. Luke Mons helped me out. I think Delonte West is from the area, and his story really gained a lot of traction because he was out there. He had a substance abuse problem, and I think it was Mark Cuban, whoever tried to put him on the right track. But like Kwame is 100% right. Like all these young men's lives, their performances, their injuries, all these stuff is constantly under scrutiny. What was the name of that book, y'all? Was it $40 Million Slave? About plantation politics as it relates to sports figures and Black athletes in particular. Yeah, I mean, call them out. Call out the Sambos. We know who the Sambos are in sports media. Jason Whitlock.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Stephen A. man. You know what I'm saying? And big up the ones that's out here doing it. What's up, Clinton Yates? You know what I'm saying? Like, who else is on the up and up in terms of sports media?
Can I tell my Stephen A. Smith story real quick?
Please.
Because it's short. No. It's short. What I like about the story is that it also it involves like a slight slight to Amy Goodman, because we were all at the National Association of Black Journalists gathering some years ago, I was trying to do Amy Goodman. Yeah, well, she was there because it's a longer story, but she was there because this was when NABJ was still part of the Unity group with the Latino and the indigenous journalists, and there was this big gathering, and Juan Gonzalez, her colleague, was speaking, and Jesse Jackson was making a big appearance. So it was a big deal for some folks. So and all the Black journalist celebrities were there. So I was going to do a quick interview with Amy Goodman about alternative media, but when I saw Stephen A. Smith walking by, I figured, well, I'm gonna see Amy. I'm more likely to see her than him. So I was like, Amy, hold on a second, let me go. And she was offended. Like you could see she was offended. She was not used to being played like that. But I was like, you just Amy Good. I'm gonna see you around. I'll catch you later. Yeah, exactly, Jackie. The goddess of Pacifica, especially at the time, right? So he comes up because I wanted to ask him about his defense at the time of Bill Cosby's anti-Black rants when he was doing all the Black people deserve their poverty stuff. So when Stephen, first of all, when he came by, he was a lot shorter and smaller than I thought. I was like, I thought you would be like, I thought anyway. So I was looking down. I was like, but he was like, and I said, so how can you defend Bill Cosby? And he was, and he just went into this whole thing. Well, brother, we got to do better, bro. And how could you?
Great impression, by the way, Jared.
Thank you. I was doing my best. I was working on it this morning. I was in the mirror all morning. I got to get ready for the Stephen A.
That was wonderful.
But he just did what he is now known for doing more routinely every morning for me personally. This little song and dance, real skillful with the words, slick with the words, had his alliterations ready, you know, all of that, but had nothing other than we got to defend the black middle class as we ascend, because of course he would eventually become the highest paid ESPN reporter, making what, $6 to $8 million a year or something like that. So he would want, you know, the Bill Cosby class defense to be prepared as he looked to enter it. So another good thing is to consider as we talk about Malcolm X today, the whole class relationship within our struggle, and folks pimping, you know, certain forms of radical symbolism and language to defend a real bougie politics. So
shout out to Juan Gonzalez, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Former young lord, you know what I mean? You know, we forget that part. Him and Geraldo Rivera, but we're not going to talk about Geraldo. But anyway, this cat really dissed Amy for Stephen A. Smith and going to admit it on Black Power Media.
and I'm going to save the story one day for my Juan Gonzalez. I'm going to save that one for my Juan Gonzalez story. I'm going to have to let him retire from Democracy Now! First before I share this one. I'm not going to do him dirty like that, but I got a good one. That's a good dude right there, man.
But doing that is like dissing Chomsky for Umar Johnson. And I'm as black as they come. Shout out to Malcolm, Yuri, and Ho Chi Minh.
Let's go.
And Virginia Davis, Troy Davis' mom.
That's right.
Now I mean, word up. The remix up in this joint. It's popping.
And shout out to all the people joining us this morning. We see you. And the new membership right on. 1st and 7. All right, right on. I hear a little football thing in there. Ife Vanterpool, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. So I think we're going. Let's check in with the ear doctor and see where he's at before we get into this next segment and this manhood discussion on Malcolm X's birthday. Good morning, ear doctor.
Clearly, Jerry Ball has talked to Stephen A.
Here's the deal. I'm from Queens, New York.
Yo,
that's good.
We're gonna come with some weather. You know how we do on this great Malcolm X Day. So let's get into it.
All right. Remix Morning Show, Black Power Media.
X Factor.
What's good, everybody? Welcome out on this beautiful Malcolm X Day. We are representing here on Black Power Media. This is the Remix Morning Show. I am the ear doctor, and we're going to get right to it with the weather. So with this weather, we're going to start off in my one town I used to stay in for a second, Montgomery, Alabama. Big up to Alabama State out there. Y'all got a high today of 83 degrees. Next, let's take it to Newport, Rhode Island. Let's take it up top. Newport, Rhode Island, you got a high of 73 degrees today. And let's take it down to St. Vincent, Kingstown, St. Vincent. Y'all got a high today of 85 degrees. Now let's take it all the way to the other side to Nairobi, Kenya. Nairobi, Kenya is going to be 74 degrees. I thought it'd be a little hotter in Africa, but depends on where you at. It's a big country. All right. So next, let's take it to Pittscockery, Scotland. I know I messed that name up, but that is, my friend, is where it is colder than a white man. And not your own. It's 39 degrees there, first of all. And it's not colder than your regular white man. It's cold as this white man right here, who goes by the name of Joseph Ignace Guillotin. He is the creator of the guillotine. And he first used it in France in 1792. Now, you know you got to be cold and diabolical to come up with some like that. So that's what it is right here on Black Power Media. That's your weather for the day. Let's take it back to the crew. You know how we do.
No.
Yeah.
Welcome
What's up?
Thanks for that report here, Doctor. Appreciate you. Out there in the heavens.
Yeah, you know, I always try to throw a little history in there, man. Who comes up with a guillotine and names it after they self?
It's stuck. So
another nice pun right there. Yeah,
that was definitely a pun right there. It's stuck. Okay.
All right, no doubt. I catch y'all next break.
All right, brother.
Right on. So again, inspired by the previous panel we had with the Blacklash Collective on Africana womanhood, we reconvened or reconstituted the manhood follow-up to be a RemiX morning show, Black Power Media discussion here to commemorate Malcolm's birthday. But also to talk about what, from my perspective at least, some issues that are still, of course, lingering. And fellas, before we got started, I just wanted to read a piece of Ossie Davis's eulogy to sort of get the frame for us real quick, where, of course, he famously wrote and delivered, I will not live up to the late, great Ossie Davis, of course, but he said that, quote, Malcolm was our manhood, our living Black manhood. This was his meaning to his people. And in honoring him, we honor the best in ourselves. Last year from Africa, he wrote these words to a friend. My journey, he says, is almost ended, and I have a much broader scope than when I started out, which I believe will add new life and dimension to our struggle for freedom and honor our dignity in the States. I am writing these things so that you will know for a fact the tremendous sympathy and support we have among the African states for our human rights struggle. The main thing is that we keep a united front wherein our most valuable time and energy will not be wasted fighting each other. However, we may have differed with him or with each other about him and his value as a man. Let his going from us serve only to bring us together now, end quote. So I mentioned a little bit, somewhat jokingly, the Kwame Brown, stuff going, but it did occur to me a couple of things, and going down that rabbit hole. One was, of course, how Black manhood is dragged in commercial media as product and for the wealth of some and the rich of some, but also the way people relate. And in a lot of that conversation was all these allusions to someone's lack of or absence of manhood, and how we deal with one another and how we deal with those differently aged within our community and so on. So it seems, a lot of those issues still seem quite relevant, and certainly for me, and I know for a lot of people in our generation, Malcolm was that symbol to help us try to figure out where we were going with our Blackness and our manhood and how to perform and behave and all of that. So it seemed like some of his lessons would still be necessary today. So what do you all think for yourselves, and who wants to jump on in and respond or add to any of that?
I think definitely to everything you said. I think that one of the things that we fail to remember is that Malcolm, you know what I mean? And I don't know why today I feel emotional, because of the fact that I feel like here's a man who was, for all practical purposes, a young man. You know what I mean? 39 years old. He never saw 40. You know what I mean? He was shot down, murdered, cut down a couple months before his 40th birthday. We also forget that on the maturity level, here's a man who was more Detroit red for the majority of his life than he was Malcolm. You know what I mean? We're talking about a 12-year time span from the time that he was in prison and he was assassinated. You know what I mean? So it's not a situation where, he came with this life of revolutionary fervor or this manhood. He literally grew up before our eyes, even though we weren't here per se. You know what I mean? We see the transformation and the transition. You know what I mean? And I feel like that part is often forgotten. For me and many brothers and sisters that I know that relate to Malcolm from the Detroit red side of things, going into that particular transformation. It's almost like losing a piece of yourself. You know what I mean? Because the fact that, just to cut it short, to be here in this era, imagine all of the Malcolms that we have lost. Imagine all the judgment that we've cast on young folk.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? All of the folks who we lost to the prison system, all the folks that we've lost to police terrorism and to social violence. You know what I mean? So we don't know how many Malcolms were actually produced because of the fact that we ourselves are guilty of throwing black men away, or black boys, as you mentioned with the situation with Kwame Brown.
I mean, I'll add on to, I second what Kalanji's saying. I think learning or getting politicized through not only reading and the speeches and the old videotapes of Malcolm, there was a construct of manhood, which for me was valuable. It was valuable for me to see somebody who was fierce, who was strong, who seemed indomitable, who would talk back, right? And I grew up in the 80s and stuff like that. So even then, it was just like somebody who was extremely intelligent and could battle with the best of them. That kind of stuff made me say I wanted to be that smart or that brave or that this, right? That stuff for me helped. I feel like, I was in my 20s when I got politicized, but it definitely helped set me on a direction around, I wanted to have certain attributes also that I felt I could give to struggle, or I could build with, or I could do work with. And I think Malcolm, for a lot of us, again, like Kalanji says, in our generation, this may extend further than men, but I know particularly for men that I know who also became politicized, that was a centerpiece. And sometimes, people carried it too far, or they thought they were sort of trying to be the embodiment of Malcolm and the rest of it. But the idea, at the very least, was that there was this person, and later on that was continued by being politicized through the Panthers and so forth. But the fact that in our struggle, that we could be sort of overtly brave, let's say in the classic sense of standing up and fighting back, that was important, because that wasn't something, again, in schooling that we got to see. We got to see the kneeling and all that stuff is also brave and beautiful. But the classic sense of like, I'm gonna stand up and defend myself and my community, that was a picture of manhood that, at very least, I'll speak for myself, that I needed and I wanted, and that I thought was important in terms of a struggle for the human rights and liberation, and somebody who was sort of who seemed to be uncompromising and militant, and was not sort of wishy-washy and demanding or saying we're taking power or we want power, right? We don't want to be integrated into your society. What we want is power. We want the right to control our destiny. We want self-determination. We need control. We weren't asking people to open up their institutions, to give us awards, to invite us to dinner, to put us on the camera standing next to them. None of that was like satisfactory. What was satisfactory was power and control. And that was something that, just made me want to be an organizer and activist for the rest of my years. So that kind of the strength was something that, for me was definitely sort of a life-setting measure for what it is I wanted to do with my life, and even some of the ways in which I wanted to do it through, right?
Papa, why don't you jump in, because I know we the two that can't really enjoy a real life barbershop talk anymore. So we have to recreate this one virtually. So go ahead and jump on in, man.
No, I was going to say that I agree with everything that's been spoken here. Of course, when I first heard Malcolm, I was in I believe I was in high school, and I was just touched by this fearless black man who, during the time when everybody was trying to appease white people, trying to make them comfortable, trying to, not scare them. And I remember I saw a documentary that was done. No, not a documentary. It was a news program that was called The Hate That Hate Produced. And I remember watching that, and you know, and how the Nation of Islam, because you know we can't talk about Malcolm without talking about the nation at that time, which isn't the nation today, but the nation at that time, and the potential that the nation had at that time to really produce a whole bunch of Malcolms. You know what I mean? But I can't divorce Malcolm from his father, and I'm gonna tell you why. Here you had his father, who was part of the UNIA, who was also vocal and outspoken in, I believe, what is it, Nebraska, surrounded by the Klan, who stood up to the Klan and was eventually murdered by the Klan. But these were the examples that a young Malcolm saw. And so when we talk about the Detroit Red part, we have to, you know, I understand that even in all of our own individual lives, a lot of times we get them seeds planted in us. And even though the fruit of those seeds aren't seen right away, but eventually, if your root is strong, and if you have those seeds that's implanted in you, then eventually that will come out, depending on the nurturing of those seeds. I remember I was listening to a radio program, and they had like a forum like we got right now. And, you know, a bunch of, you know, older men sit around talking about, you know, this goes to your point, Kalanji. They were sitting around talking about what was wrong with the young men today and young black men today. And I remember it was a call-in show. And I remember this caller came in. He was a young man from Philly. And he said, you know, I've been listening to this radio program, and I'm hearing all of you men up here who sit around here talking about what's wrong with us and how bad we are. He said, but I got one question for you. Where the hell was y'all at when we was coming up? He said, see, because what happened is y'all ran to the hills. Now you got to come down. You coming back down to the valley and talk about what is wrong with us, and you wasn't there. And so when I listened to this program, I thought about myself, who came up in a single, in a family that was raised by a single mother. I thought about my friends. I thought about all of the of boys that I went to school with who didn't have any mentors, who didn't have anyone to take us under their wings, but yet they were talking about how bad we was, what we what we lacked. Why don't we man up? And how you gonna tell somebody to man up and you ain't giving them the lessons to man up? So I can't divorce Malcolm from his father, because those examples of his father fighting the supremacy, white supremacy at that time, was always in him. And I think that even though he went through his, as a lot of us have, went through those different avenues to eventually get to where we're celebrating him today, we cannot take away the example of his father. And I think that's what's so important about what Kalanja was saying, how we throw young men away. And I think that's why it's so important that mentorship and fatherhood, which often in the black community is not celebrated, but how fatherhood, black fatherhood, is so necessary.
I agree with what you're saying, Abdus. And I think someone asked in the chat room, was I saying that I was glorifying the Detroit Red side of things? Absolutely not. What I am saying, like Abdus said, I grew up in a two-parent household myself in the project. My parents were strict, you know what I mean? But that didn't stop me from being my own version of a Detroit Red. You understand what I'm saying? That didn't stop me because of the fact that, you know, you always have the quote unquote peer pressure and so on and so forth. So the ground, and I agree, the foundation is always there. But even with good foundations, sometimes the seeds have to be planted at the right time. It has to be nurtured, and you know, you got to keep them away from the weeds when as the plant grow. You know what I mean? You got to make sure that you pick these weeds up out the garden, or eventually that fruit tree or those vegetables that get choked out by the weeds. I think I'm hard on folks, you know, because in the movement itself, you know what I'm saying, you have a lot of quote unquote class struggle, right? And I'm always pro underdog. I'm always pro streets because of the fact that, again, I've been raised around so many different individuals, and there's folks that would have caught me at a certain time in life that would have threw me away. You understand what I'm saying? They would have disregarded and dismissed me. So, you know, I know that also oftentimes there's a judgmental side of things. I appreciate what Kamal was saying in regards to El Hajj Malik Shabazz's bravery, because of the fact that we live in a cowardice time. Even folks who so-called organizers are I'm gonna put it blunt, are fucking cowards. You understand what I'm saying? They talk that talk on the internet. They talk that talk on social media. They talk that talk in the halls and all of that, but they don't go to the streets. One of the things I appreciate about Malcolm is his soapbox situations was right in the middle of Harlem. You know what I mean? So if you got a problem with this man, when he step off stage, you can address that problem. See, nowadays, when you have a problem with an individual, you got cats who throw rocks and hide their hands. They get up in the chat box. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? They ain't on the soapbox, they're in the chat box. They get up on social media talking that yin yang. You know what I mean? So I appreciate Malcolm for being brave enough. You know what I mean? With or without bodyguards. You understand what I'm saying? With or without bodyguards, and being honest in his growth and development. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes folks become zealots and they feel like I can't speak out against this one or I can't speak out against that one. If Kamal or Jared or Abdus is on some bullshit, my first thing is I'm gonna pull him to the side and say, yo, you know you're on some bullshit right now, right? That's the first warning. The second warning, listen, I told you was on some bullshit, right? The third time, it can go either way because of the fact that it shouldn't be no 3 times. So if I have to stand up, if I have to be on Black Power Media and speak out against some bullshit that my brothers is doing, Noah had already told them, and we already talked about it, but they still went astray. I've been invited to different lectures and panels where I told the promoters, look, I don't agree with such and such, and they do it anyway. And when I get on stage, I address that shit in front of their crowd and say, look, these people on bullshit. They're trying to use me and you to come up. That's what I appreciate about El Hajj Malik Shabazz. There was no fear. You know what I'm saying? He had muscle in his voice. And there's many people that walk around today that talk about if Malcolm was around, they'd be with him. I don't believe you. Right. Because of the fact that you got the Imam Jamil Alameen's out there right now. You understand what I'm saying? You got brothers like Daruba. You know what I'm saying? The Sekous who have dedicated their lives. No one is perfect. Yes, we all gonna make mistakes. You understand what I'm saying? We all gonna be in error. But the thing is, what is our intention? Do we have good intent? What does the track record look like? And El Hajj Malik Shabazz as a young man, and I say that again because we have to stress that. He would have been 96 years old today, but he was assassinated at 39 years old. I know folks right now that's my age that still ain't on the right side of history. You understand what I'm saying? So we salute Malcolm all day, every day.
How do you all think his legacy of manhood plays out today in today's environment, in some of the what I perceive as some of the shifting sands of how manhood is defined? You know, whether it's however people feel about, you know, sexuality, the fact remains there's no evidence for the claims against Malcolm's heterosexuality. But that has been used for the last several decades, I think, as an attempt to challenge what many of us see as his representation of manhood. And I think has in some ways continues to be used today to suggest that there is a retrograde nature to that version of manhood that many of us found appealing in Malcolm and others. Do you all see any shifting sands in that, or do you all think that I don't know, maybe somehow today discussions of manhood and changes with sexual and gender identities are I don't know, helping him not time well or age well?
I think if Malcolm came around today, he would definitely run into some problems. If he came around today talking what he was saying in the 60s and talking during his Nation of Islam period, even in the period when he came back from Mecca after he made his Hajj, and he made that transition from the racialized belief systems of the Nation of Islam to the more universal beliefs of Orthodox Islam or Sunni Islam, whatever you want to call it. But still, with that type of masculine tone, that masculine projection, self-defense, meeting violence with violence, meeting aggression with aggression. I think that if he came around today, he would have been considered by many in our circles as being toxic masculinity. I think
dude, just real quick, because I don't mean to. I'm not trying to, because I don't. I actually just quick. I want to. I don't think I phrased it properly, because I don't want to. I actually personally am not a fan of the "if he were here, what would he," type of thing, because he would have been a very different person. This world would be a very different place had Malcolm not been assassinated. But the question of the way we look back at his manhood symbolically. Is really where I'm trying to get at. Like, do we, when we look back at that version of manhood and try to apply it today, are we running into problems? Are we bringing up something that he might have himself, quote unquote, evolved out of? Are we being unfair to him? Is kind of where I was really trying to go. Not trying to project where he would be, because I think that's unfair to him. And anyway, but go ahead. That's what I was trying to get at. Go ahead.
Well, I would pass that on to somebody else, because my thoughts was on that, so I don't want to take up time to rethink something else. So I'll pass it on.
I'm mute, Kamal. You're muted, Kamal.
I'll jump in quickly, because I think there is. It's hard to divide it up as such as like what if he wasn't here. But I do think a reexamination of manhood, black manhood, manhood in general, I think that's okay, right? I think that's okay for these times. I do think that in our sort of derivative taking on of Malcolm for us who are alive today, I do think black men in movement can be checked and should be checked, right? I do think that what's happening today in terms of trying to balance out or rethink or go back and suggest how mistakes were made during Malcolm's time and now today is a positive enactment of sort of an examination of manhood. Because if we don't, going back to Kalanji's point in some ways, right? If we're not examining how we act, what we do, then we're not moving forward, and we're just sort of taking something in time and freezing it and suggesting it works forever and forever and ever, right? So I do think there's things about how we sort of derivatively represent Malcolm that needs to be checked and changed at times. I think there are issues in our community that we must confront. That includes not throwing away young brothers and stuff like that, but it includes chatting it up with young brothers about their definition sometimes of manhood, and everything is not everything, but like, whether or not folks are too fast to go towards quote unquote aggression or whatever. There may be even reasons for that and things that folks need to not be on that. But that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be confronted or talked about or discussed or thought through. And I think even the idea of uplifting of LGBTQ communities is something that our generation of black men, my assumption is that, we're all here sort of cis-identified heterosexual black men. That is something that we have either suppressed, laughed at, not taken seriously at different times in our lives, not necessarily created space to be in organization with or conversation or dialogue because we didn't necessarily get it. I think those kind of things that people are sort of saying, wait a minute, we are here too. We're black too. We want to lead too, right? I don't think it should be some flipping of now black men are excluded from it. Black straight men are excluded from leadership or whatever like that. But I do think some re-examination of people's roles and responsibilities and places and movements is fantastic in terms of sort of a broadening of like what black liberation and black movement is, right? Because folks are here and folks want to take place in their liberation. because they understand, just like we understand, that if there is no re-examination, so what if you have Black leadership, if that Black leadership turns out to be male and sexist, or male and patriarchal, or male and homophobic, right? So I think some of the re-examinations of today are great, as long as they're linked to politics, to me, right? It's got to be linked to politics. It's not about putting somebody with a particular identity in front, and that person has no politics that's different than the liberal, the conservative, or the moderate that was there previously. I don't care about that. I don't care who you are. You can't lead, to me, in a radical movement around Black liberation if you don't have the politics. So in the end, for me, it comes down to mixing the politics of what liberation should be with thinking about what manhood, an evaluation or a reevaluation of the totalness of what manhood is. So all this idea, like, you can't cry, you got to be stoic, and all that kind of stuff, that can be considered old school stuff that may not be as valuable today. And not as healthy. Kind of like a Van Jones thing, who may take this stuff to like the
overcorrection.
Yeah, like a level of, like, obviously this dude is performing. It's like performative activism, as opposed to feeling like this guy is some having some emotional whatever reaction to something, because he does it on cue and he does it too much, right? So, but I think I
couldn't help it, man.
Yeah, I see. But I think the obvious reevaluation of what's appropriate in terms of men expressing themselves is something that we should be in touch with, talk about, deal with, and organize around. And for those of us that don't, then we should be chastised and taken to task for thinking that manhood means this one thing and this one thing only.
Right. I agree with that. I would say, and I'm gonna make it short. I mean, Malcolm would have been 96 right now. So, I mean, I can't speculate on where he would have been, his evolution, any of that type of stuff, because I kind of look at, in certain instances, I look at things as divine decree. You know what I mean? I mean, like, certain things I feel are bound to happen due to climate, due to the state, so on and so forth. So it's all different types of things that's going on. But I would also add that there are no absolutes. You know what I mean? We define manhood as how we define manhood. You know what I mean? There's certain responsibilities and certain accountability that we all should have. But in the grand scheme of things, in reality, we talk about we're fighting for freedom, but I don't think we all have a clear definition of what freedom is. And I think that we all have our ideas of what freedom is. And we try to still, in our quest for freedom, we still try to enforce our own ideals and morals on other people. You know what I'm saying? On other individuals. So my particular stance on that is what you eat don't make me shit. You know what I mean? As long as you fighting against oppression, and you working to be a decent human, you know what I mean, and treat other people the way you would like to be treated, then I respect that more than me being concerned with what you do. I'm trying to get free. So who you sleep with and all that shit, that's your own personal business. You know what I mean? But let's be like Malcolm. Let's work towards evolution. Let's work towards change, because at the end of the day, I think that's the direction that it appeared that he was going in. He was still finding himself, and he was at the same time working on righting the wrongs that he was dealing with.
So the version of manhood that keeps suppressing Pan-Africanism and nationalism and internationalism and guerrilla warfare, that's that version we don't want to suppress. Whatever other elements of manhood gets adjusted, at least I think we agree that, or at least I don't want to suppress those tendencies.
Because that's not just an expression of manhood, that's an expression of liberation, of womanhood, of peoplehood, right? That's what people that's what people fight and strive for. So when folks try to say that that's some kind of toxic man view of liberation, then I don't think you really studied liberation. You're studying some liberal theory about change within acceptable change rhetoric within the American society, which leaves us so-called second-class citizens, right? So you're not studying revolution, because women participated in those same actions. You can't look at Ho Chi Minh's birthday today. You can't look at the Vietnamese War and not look at the woman's role, right, in fighting, actual fighting with guns, right, fighting with weapons, theory development, right, tactical development. So that's not that, you know, for people who subscribe that or want to act like that's just strictly some manhood thing, then they don't understand the contours of war and revolution, I think.
And wait a minute, and to also point out, you know, Yuri, however we want to define man or womanhood, Yuri, there was no punk in her. Like when the bullets started flying and people started running for the exits that day, she went to Malcolm. Not everybody could say that. Anyway, sorry, Abdus, go ahead, man.
No, I was just thinking about what you said, Jared, about not giving up some of those things. I guess that's not uniquely expressed through masculinity, but that is often expressed through certain expressions of masculinity. And I think that what Kamal was saying also is this whole, for lack of a better term, this white liberal definition of how we should free ourselves. And the personal example that I give is when Jackie and I was down at the Venezuelan embassy when it was getting real heated. And somebody attempted to come at Jackie, you know, a couple guys that was on the other side of the ideological thing. And so when they went to go surround her, well, my reaction was, you know, I'm going to protect my wife. So when I went over there and stood between them and her and had some words with the dude, you know, some of the comrades, white liberals, who we are friends with, but they got on me talking about, well, we're not here for violence. Well, you know, I'm not going to sit back.
Then back up.
You guys insult my wife.
Then back up. Because it's about to be some if my
So,
wife is in danger. It's about to be a whole bunch.
Exactly. You know, so and they come, oh, well, you know, just don't pay them no mind. Nah. I can't afford to do that. So, you know, so I think, Jared, what you were saying, and what you were saying, Kamal, too, is we need to define those expressions of, and I agree, it's not uniquely, because my wife would have done it for me, but it's not uniquely a masculine trait. But I think that like you said too, Jared, there are some things that we have to hold on to, because I always felt that when people say that we shouldn't be about that, then you're comfortable with my oppression then.
Mm. Yeah, I'm definitely you know, like we talked about on Renegade Culture the other day. You know, yeah, violence is necessary. I still stand by that. Peace all day, every day. I got love for you, all that. But you know, you cross that line, you know, all bets is off. And exactly. And I'm not. I don't subscribe to being a person who allows other people to control my destiny. You know what I mean? When I talk about freedom, I talk about being free. I'm a team player. I unite with us moving together, but with certain shit, don't even step to me, because I'm a grown man and I'm experienced with what it is I do, and I don't need anyone to tell me how to move. Now, if it's a situation where I'm getting hot-headed or I'm getting heated or whatever, I heed advice. You know what I mean? But when I make up my mind is my mind and my mind alone, and I don't allow other people to control my shit. So when I deal with coalition work, I respect coalition politics. You know what I mean? But when it comes to my personal politics and my personal business, you know, get out the way.
We could always just let everybody know from jump that there's coalition politics up to a certain line, and then we can revert to Malcolm. Somebody put their hand on you.
To the cemetery.
I mean, you know, all bets are off. I mean, you know, so. But look,
think about that during that time. Think about that. I'm sorry to think about that during that time period where Black expression, even in terms, forget about the onslaught of the civil rights movement, but where it was mandated, right, that Black folks had to get off the street when white people came by. I couldn't look in white people's eyes, right? Could be lynched and or killed for saying the wrong thing or being in the wrong neighborhood or being accused of something. Think of that. Think about the only in northern areas, right, where we talk about quote unquote fights or aggression or whatever, where you only could act out against each other because you knew if you acted out against some cop or said something to some cop that, you know, you would get your ass beat seriously and disappear. And that still happens today. But imagine it happening 40, 50 years ago, right? When there was no videos, no cameras, no nothing reviewing, nothing, right? Then imagine the challenge to that being nonviolent resistance, being I'm going to show you my humanity by letting you hit me, by letting you attack me. Think of what Malcolm meant when he came out, not the only one, right? But who became the strongest voice for saying, I don't fight a liberation struggle like that, right? If you take me, I'm gonna take you too, right? That's what the struggle is. Not just going to be on your playing field that leaves you in power and control and lets people cry sympathetic tears over my death. That's not power, right? Malcolm, for us in America in particular, other people may have known what liberation struggles really meant or what it could mean and all that kind of stuff. Malcolm took the evaluation of like, if you want to be engaged in, what he said about revolution, don't say the word because you don't know what it means, right? Revolution is bloody. He talked about that as a possibility that folks were like, and then he was organizing, like we said earlier, Malcolm was organizing potentially to send people to the Congo to fight, right? He was organizing, talking about gun clubs. He was organizing militant organization to stand up, Black men and Black women. So that's the context in which he even grew out of, which made his death at that time even more inspiring for people because he left behind words and images and the organizing that people picked up the mantle of. And again, It doesn't mean we all did it correctly, but people picked up the mantle and they continue to this day to struggle around what is the right ways for self-determination, not liberal integration, not organizing on your terms of what freedom means for me, not being able to join your parties, right? Not being able to be an adjunct onto your system, but creating our own stuff and controlling it. So I think that's that stuff. Even that's the stuff that still to this day resonates around Malcolm. It resonates in the streets more than the academy. Like when I look at people who know Malcolm, it's almost like Garvey and Du Bois. Du Bois was a great human being, a great man. He did a lot of fantastic things. But, him and Garvey were contemporaries for the most part. It's the streets that celebrate Garvey, not the academics. It's the streets that celebrate Garvey. It's the streets that celebrate Malcolm. And those things are important.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to just add when you said that because it was on my mind that Malcolm was like that even that even put him at odds even with the Nation of Islam leadership. I remember when a couple situations. Remember reading, I wasn't there, but I remember reading about a couple of situations where the brother that was murdered by the police out in LA, Malcolm wanted to send the FOI there, to deal with that situation. The situation with the Birmingham bombing, where Malcolm went to Elijah Muhammad and said, look, we need to, get involved in that because here we are talking, the self-defense stuff. Yeah, we're not on the scene in none of these things, and he was really concerned about the militant message of the Nation of Islam being discredited because Elijah Muhammad was more he wanted to take the Nation of Islam more in the spiritual direction and felt like the spiritual it should be a spiritual response to this oppression, where Malcolm was it's spiritual, but we also need this other thing too. And so and I bring this up, and I guess I'll throw this out to you guys too. I know, Jared, when you had Yusef Bunchy on your show one time, and Bunchy and Bunchy said that there was a time when it got to the point where he outgrew, and I understood that because it was the same way with me with some of my Muslim compatriots. It's like it seemed like when you outgrow the ones that nurtured you, I would like to hear y'all concept on that because when Yusef Bunchy said that, I was like, wow, I really can relate to that. Because the brothers around me at the time, they went to a certain level, but I wanted to do more. So I mean, I just wanted to just throw that out there.
Well, speaking of those who do more, we want to remind everybody to if they at all possible can become members and come through on Sunday at 11 a.m. for our members only discussion with the soldier stories. Conversation with members of the Black Liberation Army, the people who took up that legacy that Kamal's talking about with Daruba, Blood McCreary, and Sekou Odinga. So please consider doing that. And to Abdus's point in question, we'll try to come back to that in a few minutes. When we come back, we have some special guests coming. When we have Dr. Ichile coming through, talking about the spiritual side of all of this to join the conversation, and our other hosts. When we all come back, we can kick some of that around as well. But in the moment, we need to get back up into the heavens where the ear doctor seems to be, back in that sun and that blaze for them Sundays. What's up, sir?
What's good? Yo, I just got to say real quick, my introduction to Malcolm X was through hip hop culture, through you had KRS-One, you had Public Enemy, you had Poor Righteous Teachers, and then Trenton, it was a lot of 5%ers and stuff. So we always wore the medallions and the Africa, the X. So I got to say it was beautiful that hip hop invited a lot of people into that world that didn't know anything about Malcolm X. So with that said, I also want to do an artist spotlight right about here, right about now. So let's get into it.
All right, let's get it. Remix Morning Show, Malcolm's birthday special, Black Power Media.
Yeah. Welcome to Black Power Media. This is the Remix Morning Show. And like they said, please make sure y'all go to patreon.com and drop a little something for the movement to keep going through a Black Power Media, and also become a member and subscribe and all that stuff right there. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to get into a artist spotlight. We're going to spotlight today the sister Sarak, who has dropped The Sharecropper's Daughter this past year, which was very dope album. I wanted to give you all a little bit of what she's done here at Black Power Media on Renegade Culture. We had the interview with her on the show, and I want to give you all a little bit of a freestyle she dropped, and it was very dope. So check this out right here.
Please don't do that.
How about that? And then after you do yours,
it's like a rose by any other name is still a rose, and the sturdiest can reach to the granite from which it grows. Then I suppose that I'm destined to shock the globe, and that electrifying used to describe me is apropos. I'm a chocolate city berry era, where they might have shot you, left you simmering in your marinara, and where them conga drums is rooted in Ghanaian fermentera. Gentrifies tribe mute the beat, I freak it a cappella. Got my formal education from my bloodline, that's Ivy. Came up in the heart of cocaine 80s, bro, no ID. Life was mostly bitter with a little bit of sweet. I had to concentrate to get all of this juice. Guess that's high C. See, they could never break my resolve, homie, I meant that. The simple baby guess that is destined through my ascendant. I tend to keep a chunk of some crystalline on my pendant. I'm listing Sunny, I'm landing these hits for maximum impact. Yeah, you see it, this big uterus energy. The ones that try to play me, them pricks usually enemy. See, they intimidated because shit's stupidly gifted, and if you out of order, I show you the sheer brute of my entropy. Right.
Oh! Yeah. So that's what it is. That's the goddess MC. And if you want to check out that episode, check out Renegade Culture right here on Black Power Media. Pull that up. We can't forget what impact Malcolm X had on the sisters also. So let's get back to the Remix Morning Crew. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I love that big uterus energy.
All right. She killed it, yo.
So we do around these parts. Renegade Culture, baby.
Hey, can I change my question though, since we coming back? Because I was in the chat and Kim Brown, you raised an interesting point. And could you please, because I ain't gonna do it justice. What you and it'll be, to put it to the fellas, because I think that does need to be addressed.
Thank you for that. So what I said in the chat was Malcolm famously said that Black women are the most disrespected and unprotected people on the planet. And my question to brothers at large, en masse, is, you know, when are y'all gonna change that? Like, because it's kind of up to y'all to change that. Because, you know, we could talk about white people, whatever, but Black women are not respected wholly by Black men. And I can point to a number of situations. A lot of sisters can relate, for example, in the work world, in corporate spaces. Like, is your Black male coworker going to look out for you? Chances, no. And I know I'm not the only person that kind of have that experience. We did a story on Burn It Down with Kim Brown that was really somewhat widely reported. Earlier in the year, a sister up in Harlem turned down the advances of a pair of guys at the liquor store, and they attacked her outside of on the street. Like, they jumped on her, they bit her. I mean, it was like an animal attack. It was so horrific, and people just stood by and watched, right? And these types of scenarios are very common. Like, Black women can be attacked physically, sexually, on the street. People will just walk on by, like nobody will jump in to intercede. Or, you know, Black women can be getting emotionally abused or physically abused in private, and people, and like, you know, dudes are just like, hey man, you know, you need to cut that out, but like nobody helps. You feel me? So I think this is a part of the conversation I would like to hear about from Black men about, you know, if we are all in agreement that Black women are underprotected and disrespected, like, what steps are Black men specifically taking to rectify that or to eliminate it altogether? Which would that's what we would really like.
Before I step off the screen, I would want to say that what I think gets confused a lot is just because of your age, you get labeled a man. You got young old boys out here that's not men. Because me as a man, if something goes down like that, I'm protecting my sister by any means necessary. So I think that when you call a man, it's certain things that come with that. Accountability is one of them. One is protecting your people. So we got a lot of old boys out here, but I'm gonna let y'all run with the rest of that. Peace.
I agree with what you're saying, Kim, to an extent. I'm gonna be honest with you, as a Black man. I just don't like the whole blanket statement, because of the fact that I don't think that there's any brother on this screen, at least, that would allow any Black woman to be disrespected. You know what I mean? Especially in our presence. You know what I mean?
So let me interrupt you real quick, Kalonji, because let me expand on that, because I believe you. I believe you 100%. But I believe that all of y'all in y'all sphere, or perhaps even acquaintances, y'all know 5 to 10 brothers that would not intercede. You feel me? Like, so what you as an individual would do is great, but can you say that about the men in your family, like all your friends? Can you say that they have that same outlook and perspective that you
I can say anybody I roll with. See, it's a difference between friends and comrades and all that. And right now, with what I do with my life, I can't afford to rock on anybody and don't get down like that.
And that's understandable.
I've been in situations where I've literally got physical. I got marks on my knuckles right now for intervening in situations. So I don't really rock with people. That's not, because of the thing that when we talk about revolution, we gotta be serious in all aspects.
Damn right.
So
yes.
so I just don't see being cool with cats who are anti-African, who are anti-revolutionary, counter-revolutionary, and definitely that are into that particular lifestyle. I don't dig that. You know what I mean?
But there's a nuance here between the two poles I think you both are representing right now that I feel like I walk in. So I'll just put myself in it, where I have not intervened in all instances of all forms of anti-Black woman verbal abuse. I don't think I've ever stood by and watched anybody get physical, but I haven't always intervened when there have been verbal altercations. And I have not always intervened when there have been personal or familial or friends who have engaged in behavior with women or family members that I would either wildly disagree with or at least mildly find uncomfortable. But the reasons for that are also nuanced. Sometimes it is a woman telling me, I don't want you doing anything else. I don't want you to intervene in any other kind of way. It is sometimes I don't know, maybe some other sort of outside concern. So I'll at least acknowledge that I don't feel like I've always upheld my own principles to the letter in each and every instance. But I will say that at times my own challenge to my own principled behavior has been encouraged by others who were suggesting that my preferences be put on the side for a so-called greater good. So while I admit I'm uncomfortable with the framing of a sort of, again, the blanket of black men, I recognize that Kalonji, I don't think it is as simple to say that I can't rock with, because there are people, there could be family members, there could be extended friends and political situations where my influence wouldn't be on the situation what I might hope it would be, or even fantasize that it should be. Anyway, so I just wanted to, I don't know if I
let me
make something clear, because I think that we are trying to have the structural thing. And we one of the things that I know, Kalonji could back me up on this. Now, it is a blanket statement that I think that we need to address, because I know that the Nation of Islam, one of the things that I give them brothers credit for is that in Philadelphia, Camden, North, wherever you go at, where there is Muslim women, those Muslim women, now what's behind closed doors, that's another thing. But I know publicly, nobody puts their hands on a Muslim woman walking the street, because the FOI made it clear. I mean, I'm talking about from way back, they set the precedent. You put your hands on a Muslim woman, a black Muslim woman, you will pay the consequences. And that kind of message is still even being felt today, even though the FOI is not as organized as it used to be. So I kind of feel like there is sometimes where we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Not that it's an individual thing, but the fact that black men haven't addressed these issues. And I think that a lot of this, a lot of it needs to come with, if we really want to talk about it, it really needs to come with how we socialize our sons. It begins in the house first. Please. How we socialize our sons, how we socialize our nephews. Like for me, I'm the elder in my family. So but I got nephews and I got a son, I got, so it's my responsibility to say to my nephews and my son and my grandsons and stuff, like, hey, look, this is what it is. And I think, Kim, you're right. I think once we start to change the narratives, to change the messaging, and realize that, look, we are responsible for protecting our black women. We are responsible, whether it's on the workplace, whatever. We need to and call it out when we see it. And that's another thing. Call it out when we see it. So, but I just wanted to make that example there, because you can't go, especially I'm from the Philly area, so you ain't touching a black woman in Philly. But that protection should extend to all black women, whether they're Muslim or not.
That's right.
That can't be right. You can't say that there are no black women in Philly getting abused. Come on.
I did not say that.
Oh, Muslim
I did not say that. Okay. You ain't going to find no black Muslim woman publicly get abused by anybody without even non-Muslim men would jump into it, because of the layer of respect that's been set a long time ago. I'm not saying that they're not being abused, but what I'm saying is there was a cultural level of respect that was laid down a long time ago that is still carried on today. What I'm saying is that protection should not just extend to just Muslim women, though. That it should extend to all black women, whether they're Muslim or not.
Can I hop in here real quick? I just want to make one more thing, and then I'll step off. But y'all, like, it's not about trying to make blanket statements about black men. Obviously, we know people are individuals. Not every man is not guilty of domestic violence or rape. However, I know far too many black women who are rape survivors and domestic violence survivors for all these dudes that go around here talking about, I don't know no rapists and I don't know no women beaters. You feel me? Like, no, you do. You absolutely do. And what Abdi said is so very important. Please, when your little boy is going to preschool and the little girls are paying him attention, don't be like, oh, look at all your little girlfriends. Look at, oh, you a woman killer. You got all the girl. Don't do that to your son. Like, don't hypersexualize these kids. Don't train these little boys to come up to be like womanizers or think that they're here to collect women at a very like the way that we message dealing with women to our Black boys and Black teens is so fucked up. and it's done, I think, very much unintentionally, but we have to make it intentional, right? We have to be more conscious about the shit that we say to our children and how that affects how they see other members of their community.
I want to add on.
Jump in quick. I'm sorry. Can I jump in just real quick? Because I think the conversation sometimes can't just be strictly separated by Black boys, Black girls. Our community has a dysfunctional dynamic in which the interactions between Black boys, Black girls, intersex, gendered, so forth and so on, is skewed, mess up. Not always, not exclusively, right? But there are definitely trauma issues that our community, which has been oppressed, poor, so forth, continues to go through. And within that, Black boys suffer and act out in ways which are detrimental. Black girls suffer and act out in ways which are detrimental. Black boys, because of as we grow older, maybe because of our physical power, right, have particularly can act on women in the community, which can be violent. There's no doubt about that. The statistics prove that out. So we're all responsible for how that dynamic plays out within our community. Right. I don't think necessarily, there's things about the Muslim approach, which I like. There's things I probably don't like. I don't like the language of strictly protection, right? I like the language of working with each other. I like the language of being partners and making sure that we're resolving each other's issues. I've seen Black men be ignorant towards Black women. I've certainly seen Black women be ignorant towards Black men. So I don't think anybody has a monopoly on that and issues and so forth. So I think the trust issue is something that needs to be rebuilt. I think it's organization and institution building, not necessarily our individual acts, which solve the larger issue or reach to solve larger issues. We certainly should be doing things as individuals, but if we don't control things as Baba Lukman was alluding to or talking about in terms of social structure, institutions, schools, right? Music, culture, right? Those kind of things are the basis of building community. And if we don't control that, if we don't set the tone for that, but they're controlled by outside entities, which do on all levels, over sexualize young people, kids, over dramatize violence and aggression, make money off of it, put it forth as the way to be, right? All that stuff happens on our community. And again, even if we control, doesn't mean perfection, but at the very least, it means we can set the tone for what we think our behaviors and attitudes and ways of dealing with each other should be done. And I think those are the things we in community movement builders, right? So we've started a cop watch and safety patrol in the community that we are organizing in, because that allows us to not only battle against police violence in our community, but to also be out there when there are things that are happening, at least on the street, that we may be able to intervene in and de-escalate so that it doesn't carry to the level of someone calling the cops on people. Or it doesn't mean that someone's going to get their ass kicked, whether male or female, whether men fighting, women fighting, male, female fighting, right? So there's things that we need to continually try to institutionalize and organize around, which for me, helps bring out that larger apparatus of changing the political dynamic so that in the workplace or in other places, people feel much more comfortable addressing these issues as opposed to not necessarily addressing them or hoping that they go away or waiting for a superhero to come in and stop it. Because I don't think that's how we're going to ultimately resolve or bring down some of these social or societal issues that we suffer from.
I want to add a point of clarity to Kim real quick. I agree with what you're saying. Indeed, it's definitely a problem. And I'm not saying I don't know anyone because of the fact that I know a whole lot of people. I'm saying that I don't fuck with these people. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a difference. We know a lot of people that do things, but it don't mean we do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Or that we associate with them. I know people that smoke crack. I don't hang with people that smoke crack, though. I know people that rob people. I don't hang with people that rob people. You understand what I'm saying? So we will address
Kalanji,
it.
what I hear in Kim's question or criticism is that knowing the crackhead and not messing with him doesn't stop the impact of crack on the community.
No.
So the fact that I know people who have mistreated women and may still be, and I'm not doing anything about it, for me is that other lane that I'm anyway.
But that's not what I'm saying though, Jared. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is simply this. I do what I can do. You know what I'm saying? I know people all over the world. I can't be in Italy. I can't be in Haiti. You understand what I'm saying?
No, but I think but for me, it's raising the question.
It's about dealing with it when you see it, right? When it's in your face. So if you've been fortunate not to experience a woman being abused in your presence, then I guess there's nothing for you to correct, right? Like there was nothing for you to intercede upon.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I mean, I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying simply this: if I know about something, I address with it. I'm taught to deal with oppression by either dealing with it physically, speaking out against it, or hating it in my heart. I don't hate shit in my heart. I either get physical, or I speak out against it. I try my best. I do the best I can. I'm against oppression on all levels. I'm against child abuse. I'm against anybody trying to overpower or dominate anyone. That includes man, woman, and child. Because I fight for the victim. You know what I mean? I'm against people being oppressed. I'm against people being suppressed. So it's not a situation where it's just like, oh, just because of the fact I know this person or I don't know this person or whatever the case is, I speak out against it. I've been a victim of abuse myself. You know what I'm saying? As a child, and that's a whole nother segment. But I'm just saying, it's like,
and just to be clear, Kalanji, like I wasn't taking a shot at you. Like that wasn't a shot at you at all. Like that was. I mean, that's a lot of niggas. Okay, there's a lot of brothers out here who, and I'm not, again, this is not directed at you at all. But I'm just saying, when women have tried to have these conversations in mixed company before, the cop out shit that I hear from men is, oh, I don't know anybody like that. You know, they ain't nobody, you know, and it's like, no, like, no, this abuse is too rampant. It's too widespread. I know too many women who are, and men too, who are rape survivors and survivors of domestic violence for nobody to know, no abusers. That's all I'm saying. So I want people to be honest and not necessarily about your present circle, but I want people to think about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, depending on your age. You know, were you around when somebody was being raped? Were you present when, or help to maybe facilitate the assault of somebody? Did you help get somebody drunk? You know, did you see your boy smack his girl once? Maybe he don't beat his current wife, but he used to whoop the shit out of his old girlfriend. You feel what I'm saying? Like there's even a lot of past actions I think that people need to be held accountable for. So I just want to make sure that we when we're talking about Malcolm and we examining Malcolm's view on Black women and our station in society, like that fight has not been won. You know what I mean? Black women are not out here protected nor respected. So that is still an ongoing battle that our Black men, I think, need to definitely take up.
I want to apologize too, because I have a very close family member that was raped. So I get kind of hot and hostile when it comes to that particular subject. So I just want to point that out. So it's like my blood boils when it comes to that. So I'm trying to deal with it in a way that is respectful. But when I say the whole blanket statement thing, and again, it was no way of it wasn't an intention of attacking you nor defending myself. I'm just simply saying that certain shit is off the table. And, you know, there's certain things that I don't mind going to sit inside a box or lay in a box for. And rape and abuse of that nature is one of the things that I don't mind taking that long trip for. So I just wanted to say that.
Unfortunately, I just don't want to jump in because I know we have a special guest joining us now, and then we want to be able to come back and then I'll obviously bring in Dr. Ichile and Jackie. I know you're trying to get a comment in, but just want to remind folks, this is the RemiX Morning Show, Black Power Media, a special tribute to Malcolm X on his birthday. And Kamal, I think we have an already for a very special guest talking about continuing the legacy of Malcolm X. that we might be ready to get to. So are we going to, honestly, I'm not sure where we are. If we're going to jump to the ear doctor real quick and then come back with the special guest, or go straight to that guest.
Let's do a little phase out with the ear doctor and come back with the special
there
guest.
we go. All right, ear doctor, welcome back. Welcome
Let's
back.
do it.
Remix Morning Show, everybody.
Place of the black man in America concern himself, since we've been away from the African continent for 400 years. We're 400 years. Why should we concern ourselves? What impact does what happens to them have upon us? Number one, first you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally, it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself. You can't hate Africa and not hate yourself. And you show me one of these people over here who have been thoroughly brainwashed, who has a negative attitude toward Africa, and I'll show you one that has a negative attitude toward himself. You can't have a negative attitude toward yourself, a positive attitude toward yourself, and a negative attitude toward Africa at the same time. To the same degree that your attitude, that your understanding of an attitude toward Africa becomes positive, you'll find that your understanding of and your attitude toward yourself will also become positive.
What up, what up, what up? How you doing, brother? Can you hear me, Jaleel?
Yes, I hear you well.
Yes. Oh, I like your shirt. So I want to, before we get to the interview, because you kind of kept this a surprise, even from the audience. So I want to let folks know that we have on with us Jaleel Montequin, former political prisoner, Black Panther Party member of the Black Liberation Army, who just recently was paroled and let out after nearly 50 years, if I'm not mistaken, of being incarcerated. And we wanted to have him on Malcolm X Day, or as folks know, El Haj Malik Shabazz Day, to talk about a couple of certain issues that are going on now. One of them is to talk about Malcolm's influence on Brother Jaleel. And then two, you just recently did an article around I think the Panther movie, or the Fred Hampton movie, and about I think the theme of the article was that Panthers are more popular than ever, but the actual Black Panther Party members, a lot of them are struggling both in and out of the joint. And so I want to talk about that too. And I think there's also a upcoming tribunal which you are involved in. So those are the three issues I wanted to cover. But first, in saying good morning to you, I wanted to have you talk a little bit about, on this day, Haj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X Day, what Malcolm meant for you and meant for your organizing the community.
Thank you, brother. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Eid Mubarak for those who had fasted during the month of Ramadan, and peace and greetings, and Habaragani, and paz, and all the other greetings that you have to people watching this podcast, watching this issue. You asked about Malcolm, El Haj Malik Shabazz, and one thing that I was very impressed about El Haj Malik Shabazz was I've read his autobiography while I was a teenager, and I think I was in juvenile hall or something like that, and a counselor in juvenile hall gave me his autobiography and said, read this. And I read it, and it had a direct impact in terms of my understanding of the social dynamics regards to society at large, particularly Black people. I've always been a conscious of the struggle, the dynamics of our struggle in this country, due to the fact that my mom raised us that way. Right? She raised us to be social conscious in our understanding of our own African history. In fact, she raised us to believe ourselves, identify ourselves as being Africans, not African Americans, not Negroes, not colored, anything like that, but we are of African descent. And so, having read Malcolm, particularly his autobiography, it gave some more substance to what my moms were saying. Right, what my mom's arguing. Now, I got to make this point. My mom was not in favor of Malcolm X. All right. I remember another time, right after he was murdered. I'm gonna tell you the story. I was in elementary school. I had not read his book. I didn't know who he was. I was in elementary school in Como Elementary School, and right outside of Daly City on the West Coast. And a young white girl came and ran up to me and grabbed me and started crying. And she's crying on my chest. Right? She said, "They killed him. They killed him. They killed him." I said, "What? This white girl grabbing me, because a friend, he was a friend, at that time, and crying about some Black guy that got murdered, right?" And she said, "They killed Malcolm." And I said, "Well, I didn't know who Malcolm was at the time." So that evening, I went home and asked my mom, I said, "Mom, who's Malcolm?" And she said, "You don't want to know nothing about Malcolm, right?" She said, "Malcolm, because she was a supporter of Martin, right? She's a supporter of NAA, Southern Leadership Christian Conference, right? SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And so she was supportive of them, and not so much in favor of Malcolm and his Black Muslim perspectives at that particular time, right? Or and not aware of his transition, right? And so that led me to that was impacting the back of my head. At some point in time, I had to learn about who Malcolm was. And so when I got the autobiography and had the opportunity to read him, then that definitely informed me why she felt the way she felt and why I need to feel the way I feel about it. Because, as generations from generations, we always reject those of the past generation because we feel they weren't as militant as they should have been or could have been, right? And so that's how I felt about my mom's and her generation of civil activists and civil rights activists and the evolving of our militant movement coming from Willie Ricks and Stuart Carmichael when they proclaimed that our movement is for Black power. All right. And so that was one of the impacts of Haj Malik Shabazz upon me, learning about his transition more so than anything else, and how he moved from the Black nationalist, not Black nationalist, Black cultural nationalist idea, a religiosity of the Nation of Islam into a more human rights development and program for which he espoused Pan-Africanist ideology that he was building upon, moving towards before his actual murder. So that was what is impactful for me, and a tradition that I've tried to carry on, right, in the course of my own contribution to the struggle. So the other point that you raised was the question of the issues of human rights. And I think it's extremely important that, as Malcolm said, that our struggle has to go to the international community, right? One of the major points that he made in terms of his understanding of our struggle was that if we continue to keep it confined to the 3,000, 2,000 mile geographics of the United States, that will continue to be one confined to the ideas of a civil rights struggle and not a human rights struggle. That when we raise our struggle to the international community and broaden our base of our outreach and have solidarity with those who are also struggling against capitalism, imperialism, and white supremacy, then we broaden our struggle into the arena of human rights. We have to demand the world to be conscious of our struggle on the basis from which we are oppressed and repressed by the system of institutionalized white supremacy. And so that has been one of the areas from which I have directed or have been mostly engaged in, at least in the last several years. I am building towards today. You made mention of the idea of what we're trying to do for an international community, what we call international tribunal. So that then segue to that. In 2018, I was put in 2018, I was put in isolation for teaching a class in Attica Correctional Facility. I was teaching Black history, and there was an approved program. But however, because I was teaching, I started class in 1861, right, and had brought it all the way up until 1966, and therefore I started talking about the Black Panther Party, and I started contrasting and comparing these street organizations today and their history and where they came from, and also the history of Black Panther Party, comparing and contrasting. And the administration didn't feel that I should be doing such. They felt that I was trying to change one organization. They called themselves Bloods, trying to turn it into an army. And so they locked me up for 4 months in Southport Correctional Facility in isolation for 4 months for teaching a class that they felt that was inappropriate for me to make the comparison and contrasting that organization, street organizations, and other street organizations with the Black Panther Party, which also was a youth movement at the advent of the Black Panther Party, also a youth movement. And so during the course of my stay in Southport Correctional Facility in isolation and solitary confinement, I decided it's time for us to bring the international community back into our area, or bring our struggle back into the arena of the international community. And I sent out a proposal to have the international jurors come to the United States and re-evaluate what had been done back in 1982, I believe it was, when the first time we had international jurors to the United States, and reevaluate that decision. At that time, they decided that the United States did, in fact, have political prisoners, right? And so this time, we felt that it's necessary to revisit that issue because some of the same political prisoners that they visited back then, international jurors, are still in prison today, right? And suffering all the ills of degradation, dehumanization that we find in the United States prison systems across the country. And so I sent out a proposal. Organization that I co-founded back in 1998, Jericho Movement, has been in existence over 21 years, going on 21 years now. Took the proposal, looked at it, and said, yes, this is something that we can organize. And they brought it to the attention of other organizations, like the Northeast Coalition of Political Prisoners, and various other support groups, political prisoners, and they decided that we're going to organize what we call International Jurors, International Tribunal 1921. Right.
When is the time? Do you already have a date set for when actually it is, or is that still being worked out?
No. The date is set for it. It's going to be October 22nd to October 24th. Right. And people can go to the spiritofmandela.org, spiritofmandela.org, and get all the information they need and to learn about how to support this tribunal. But let me speak a little bit more about the tribunal and in relation to Malcolm X. Right. Again, Malcolm said that it is necessary for us to take our struggle into the international community and build on the basis of that. And so what is happening in terms of October of this year, it is also, for people who do not know, it's also the 70th anniversary of Paul Robeson and William Patterson petition to the United Nations we charge genocides. All right. And so we are also commemorating the 70-year legacy of Paul Robeson and William Patterson, first petition to the United Nations in behalf of Black people in this country, New African people in this country, we charge genocides. So what we're making an argument that we charge genocides again, right? That the conditions from which there was raised back in 1951 by Robeson and Patterson, those same conditions exist today, right? Even in fact, in some instances, they have been exacerbated, even worse conditions, particularly when we look at the idea of the condition of mass incarceration of Black, brown, and red people in this country. And so we decided that we're going to bring our issues, the charge of genocides, again, to the international community and have the international jurors come here and hear testimony, straight testimony about the conditions of environmental racism, mass incarceration, police brutality and murder, issues of poverty, and other types of forms of violence that we have been subjected to miseducation of Black people of color, right? And all the conditions that amount to, in terms of our own mortality rate, the degradation and decimation of our mortality rate to a point where as genocide, the article of genocide, the 1948 Genocide Convention indicates that a genocide can be committed in conspiratorial terms or in actual terms. It can be done in whole or in part. And we raising the argument based upon our condition in the United States that the protocols by which the United States treat Black people, the means and methods by which we are engaged in to survive in the United States, that we have suffered, at least in part, the practices of genocides against people of color, Black people, New African people, Native Americans naturally, and brown people in the United States. And so we raise. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let me stop you here. We only have a few minutes left because I want to, the final topic I want to bring up with you, and we put in the chat the website for folks to go to find out more, and we'll highlight that more throughout this program and on our social media accounts also. But the final topic I wanted to bring up with you was something that got me to do a fund drive, a mutual aid drive to help support veteran Panthers, and that's going to be kicked off today. You recently did an article in which you talked about the idea of Panthers being so popular today in theory and or for entertainment purposes, but actual Panthers, the folks who did that work, are actually struggling. So can you talk a little bit more about that topic of like how Panthers are doing and vis-a-vis the sort of the way Hollywood is portraying Panthers today?
Sure, I would love to. Let me just make one more point in regards to the International Tribunal, and I'll get right into that. On Sunday, the 23rd, we'll be having a webinar, right? This will be our second webinar promoting the Spirit of Mandela International Tribunal 2021. And so we encourage people to go to the website and sign on to the webinar and learn more. The first webinar was last month on the 23rd. This one is the 23rd of this month. And next month, we'll have another webinar, the third webinar in the series, promoting the International Tribunal, and it will be towards the international community, directed towards the international community and getting them on board and involved. So we encourage people to go to the webinar, learn more about what we are doing. It's going to be probably be of historic nature, right? And endorse the International Tribunal, right? And if you can possibly do so, contribute to the International Tribunal. There's a lot more that need to be said about that, but unfortunately, with time constraint, we cannot do so. And so the issues of the letter that was submitted, or that was distributed, was signed by several members of the former members of Black Panther Party and BLA, including the Ruba Ben Wahab, Sekou Odenga, and others. And one of the things that we are charging, or what we are raising, is the question of people are monetizing the name and the legacy of the Black Panther Party, with no consideration to those individuals who can still confined with these COINTELPRO convictions, right? Still confined and suffering the idea of COINTELPRO, of repression of the Black Panther Party. And for those who have been released from prison, right, naturally after 30, 40, 50 years of incarceration, right, what can they bring back to society at large other than their knowledge and their experiences, right, in terms of job skills and having the capacity to live a viable life in society is very much restrained after all those years of incarceration. And so with this amount of money is being raised by various individuals and persons maybe in Hollywood, outside of Hollywood, and other writing books and etc., academics who are basically profiteering, in my thinking, profiteering off the legacy of the BPP and the BLA, then we are calling for them to at least contribute, right? Create a fund of some form for the rehabilitation of the former Panther, former BLA members who are now struggling to survive at home in the streets, and those who are still incarcerated, right? We need to create a condition by which, I mean, we don't have a retirement fund. There is no such thing as a retirement fund for revolutionaries, right? But nonetheless, our comrades are suffering, right? And it's up to the people. We fought for the people. We continue to fight for in behalf of the people, right? And for those of us who are aged, right, who are matured, it is incumbent upon, those of us who have the means, right, to support them, support our comrades, support these brothers and sisters, who has been out there on the front line.
That's right.
We don't have, like I said, we don't have a veteran program like the institutions that we are confronting, right, who are in opposition to our very existence. All right, so we have to create a condition by which, in our social order, right, and building a movement that we take care of our own, right? Take care of our own. As I read my book, we are our own liberators. That also means that we are our own supporters in terms of moving towards liberation, right? And so we need to begin to develop that process.
Yeah. So with that said, the organization Community Movement Builders, in association with some others, my dear sister Vera Abiodun, we put together a mutual aid fund at Patreon. And so we're just starting it. We're just working out all the kinks and so forth. But we've went around and got support from Panthers to be able to do this. We're still getting more support from Panthers to be able to do this. And the website folks can go to is patreon.com. Veteran, what is it? Veteran BPP Mutual Aid. I'm sorry about that. Veteran BPP Mutual Aid. If they can go there, if you're going to give $5 to Black Power Media, maybe this week give $3 and then give $2 to the Panthers, or whatever you can do. But we want to blow this page up, and we're going to go to some of these larger institutions that Jaleel mentioned, not only the ones in Hollywood that are monitorizing, but nonprofits, which are monitorizing the images, the name, the history, the politics of the Panthers, and bringing in really, really, really huge amounts of money, claiming they're doing work on the ground that is similar to the Panthers or in the spirit of the Panthers, but paying themselves huge salaries and so forth, that those organizations also need to give up some resources to help support the Panthers, that everybody who's involved in the struggle need to figure out ways in which we can support these sisters and brothers who, like you said, like it's paying everyday utility bills, people who just want to have a drink after work. I don't care what y'all spend the money on, but we need to get resources in people's hands so they can live dignified lives, because these are the folks who struggled for us and with us around our issues of liberation. So on that note, Jaleel, I want to thank you so much for getting up, for coming on, for being a part of our morning show. We will definitely have you back several times. Might even give you a segment if you want, brother, to talk more about not only the Panther legacy, but the work you're doing now. Do you have any final words for us?
Yes. The only final words I have for people to go to spiritofmandela.org. Join us in this campaign. It's proved to be a historic endeavor that we engaged in. And it's extremely important that we build a broad breadth of support from the academic, religious, community, nonprofits, activist community across the country. We want to make this thing so powerful. So one of the things that we're also going to do after the tribunal, we will be submitting a federal petition, civil rights complaint to the United Nations based upon the decisions of the tribunal. And so we're going to have to need resources in order to prosecute the civil rights complaint of genocides. And so this is not just the one-day event. This is a process. This is a campaign that we engaged in to make the United States accountable for the conditions of Black people and people of color in this country. So join us, get involved in this program. Thank you, Kamal. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jaleel, and thank you. We're going to go back and take a little break on Black Power Media, the RemiX show. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Right on. RemiX Morning Show. That was dope.
Yeah, I appreciate. I was like, I had to get that brother up way early to make sure he could do that. So I'm sorry we ran over a little bit, but I wanted to get that stuff out there because he's a hero. Somebody I got to visit and do work with when he was locked down, And so to have him out now and be able to do the work that he's doing, to talk about the things that he's talking about, and then for us to be able to try to support him. So I think it's so important that this fund, other funds be developed to support not only the veterans of the Black Panther Party, but the veterans of the Black Power movement that don't get the support they need from our community in order to continue just to live decent lives. A lot of them are struggling. So we need to take that into account when we go to these movies or buy our T-shirts and all that kind of stuff. Like none of that money is going to the veterans of the Panther legacy and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Well, speaking of under-supported, Dr. Chile, definitely wanted to give you a chance to come on in, because I know some of the work that you're doing and one of the campaigns you've launched is around, sisters not being properly supported. So I definitely wanted to make sure we got a chance for you to have a chance to chime in on all that has been said this morning. And as you do, I'll share with folks again your campaign. Somewhat similar to the one Kamal was talking about for political prisoners, Mad Money for Mama. So
Mad Money for Mama.
Please. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jared, for giving me the space. In this day where we're talking about Brother Malcolm and Black masculinity, I think it's important to note that we're actually also talking about women. We're talking about folks who don't exist on the strict binary as well today. And the campaign that I started is called Mad Money for Mamas. And this is a GoFundMe campaign to try to raise money for support, financial support for Black women who are experiencing domestic violence or trying to extract themselves and their children from domestically violent situations. This helps with legal fees. This helps with childcare. This helps with therapeutic services. And this is just basically from my work with and experience with and direct connections with specific mothers in communities really around this country who are dealing with this. But I think one of the reasons that people stay in abusive situations is they cannot afford to extract themselves. So this is really a way of supporting them financially so that they can pay for the things they need to get their lives back on track and to get away from that. And again, this is not to say that men don't suffer from domestic abuse. I think that's really important to note. But I think what I'm hearing all day, and I think this is the healthiest part of this conversation, is that we all need to be protecting each other, not just because men don't protect women just because they're women. They need to protect women because they're a part of the community. They're a part of the family, right? Today, we just happen to be focusing on what Black men are going to do, what Black men are going to be, right? And at the same time, we can't ignore the specific types of gendered violence and oppression that are faced by various segments of our community. That has to be a part of the conversation, because this is how we create targeted solutions that address these various intersectional ways in which people are oppressed. So we can't ignore that and act like everything's the same for everyone. Everyone experiences the Black world the same way. It's not true. And I just want to also give a very quick personal shout out. Today, I am thinking about my grandfather, Jesse Waits. He has the same birthday as Brother Malcolm, so it's his birthday as well. He would have been 92 today. And my granddaddy, Jesse, his story is very much connected to this issue. My granddaddy was born in Alabama in the 1920s and was essentially had to run and leave his home at the age of 15 and run up to Chicago because he was defending one of his sisters from a group of white boys who had intended sexual violence against her. And he had the nerve to actually say something to them. I don't know what it is about people born on May 19th, but he got out of his place, and they knew that this mob of white boys was going to come to get him. So they packed him up and got him out of there, and ended up in Chicago. So that's why I ended up being from Chicago. But to hear my granddaddy tell it, he would just as easily defend his brother Bill the same way if someone was coming for his brother, because they're family. We protect each other because we're family. Now, it's not to say that his sister didn't have a slightly different scenario, right? Because of the fact that she's a woman, there was a different type of violence that was intended for her, right? And so I think that there's something that we should note. It was funny because when Brother Kalanji was speaking earlier, he said a phrase, and Brother Kalanji be coming with these Blackisms that I think are really, they're just classics. He said something my granddaddy Jesse used to always say, "What you eat don't make me shit." Like my favorite thing. My granddaddy may not have had all the language of ideology and analysis, but he was really
Jay-Z stole that line too.
Yeah, he was really clear on some things, and really had a code that he lived by. And I think those old codes really help us sometimes move away from a lot of the distractions that prevent us from just being good humans with each other, and for each other. I think that's something that I love about Brother Malcolm. He's like my spiritual granddaddy, you know. And I think for many of us in the struggle, he is that person. He is someone who was a lifelong learner. He always held space for new understandings to come into his life. I consider myself to be that type of person because I read his book when I was 17, and just that impacted me, just like Brother Muntakim said, just like others have said on here. Like that's the way he impacted my consciousness and my values and the way I love Black people. And I'm also currently in my Malcolm year. I'm 39. And, you know, like the Christians say they have their Jesus year at 33. Like, this is the year I'm really thinking deeply about the impact and the legacy and how I want to do this. So yeah, I'm saying all this to say that Malcolm was such an important model for how to love and how to be in community with people, how to value Black people who aren't necessarily like you, who don't pray like you, who don't come from the same economic class as you, but how to move forward in that love. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to add to the conversation. Show your love in as many ways as you can. And also, Kamau, I wanted to push back on something that I heard you say yesterday about healing. I don't think healing and the struggle for power are divisible. I don't think we should try to say it's an either or. You know, I appreciated the point you were making that we do need to struggle for power, and we shouldn't let these self-help trends of self-care, which can sometimes be selfishly individualistic, distract us from the quest for power. But I also feel like healing, it has to be there at every stage of the process. Doing things like this and being with our community is healing. Like and this is a Malcolm X quote on my shirt. Hold on, let me show y'all. Can y'all see my shirt?
You know what? Why don't we
When I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. Yeah. You know, again, he used therapeutic language. It was fiery language, right? But we talked about how fire is therapeutic in itself. But I think that there was something about him that always had a compassionate element to it. And I think that being together is healing. Having someone who is like you, who wants to connect with you, that's healing work. Healing doesn't have to be this lofty thing that you have to go to Tulum, Mexico and sit on a beach to do. You can
Although
do
Tulum
it
sounds nice.
All right. But you can do it by looking someone in the eye and having a connection and being able to connect on the thing you have in common, the goal you have in common, even the oppression that you may have in common. So healing is kind of always there, because if we're a bunch of broken people, what are we going to do with the power when we get it? We either reproduce the bad practices of our enemies, or we give it back. We give it away, right? So I think that I just wanted to say that as well, because I think that Malcolm always also was speaking around healing, even without maybe directly speaking there. That's all.
Absolutely. That's a hell of a wrap up right there. That's what we talking about. You know, definitely. You know, this is the holy day.
I apologize. I know we got like 4 minutes, but I had to hop off, do an interview for my real job, and hop right back on, because I really wanted to address a couple of things. Because as the wife of a Black man who, you know, I have a lot of these old school ideas about manhood, and Malcolm fit that, but he was more than that for me. I mean, I think when we look at the dysfunction in our communities, we have to understand that this is a function of the indoctrination, white supremacy, colonization, settler colonialism, white male patriarchy. That's not manhood. What we see our brothers expressing when they don't physically protect us, that's not Black manhood. That is an expression of white male patriarchy and the indoctrination that Black men get about the way they interact in our communities. That's a result of that. Yes, we do protect each other. We protect family, but we're all indoctrinated not to see ourselves as family. We don't believe we're connected. We don't think we are connected to each other. So, of course, we see our sisters and brothers being mistreated in our own communities, in our own households sometimes. Mm-hmm. And we think, well, it ain't me. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's not like we're all individually horrible people. We're all individually oppressed, and the oppressed will always believe the worst about themselves and each other. To change this, we've got to have deep, serious, constant political education constantly on a 24-hour basis, like Coca-Cola markets to people so that a 5-year-old knows that they want a Coke and a smile by their 5. That's the level of political education we have got to give our people. I didn't make that up. I learned that from Kwame Brown. So this is still very true. But this thing about, Black maleness and aggression and protection. And I love that Abdus always tells this story about the Venezuelan embassy, because when we are together outside of other people, I'm never going to tell you how wonderful and sweet and kind and affectionate this man is with me, because that's not your business. That's not for you to see. We'll joke about us being, dirty old middle-aged people doing freaky stuff, which is true, but that's for the camera also, because that's just a part of, we'll give you a little bit of a peek into who we are as people, as married people. And yeah, we want to show what a healthy relationship between Black folks in the revolution looks like. But his vulnerability as a man, he feels safe being that vulnerable with me, and only with me, because I'm not going to use it against him. I can't say that I have not seen other sisters use Black men's vulnerability against them when they expose it. So I feel like we have to be careful when we want Black men to be vulnerable, to show their feminine side, to be okay with their femininity. We have to understand that we got to earn that trust from them. That every time a brother says, look, I will protect my woman, we don't jump on that man for saying the wrong words. Well, she's not your woman. I mentioned something on my timeline about wanting to cook something. He saw a recipe. He was like, look, babe, can we have this? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll make it. And people jumped on it like, well, why can't you cook? Talking about him. We've got to not do that. We have to not. Our relationship is ours. Our vulnerability, his vulnerability with me, that's personal. I am sure that the Malcolm that we all saw and loved and learned from and propped up our hopes for the manhood of our nation on, that was not the Malcolm that Betty saw at night. That was not the Malcolm that came home and played with those babies and that made those babies. So I think we have to be careful when we're having these conversations about what we want Black men to be. The same safe space that we want for ourselves, sisters, to be vulnerable and to express everything of what we are, vulnerable and strong and aggressive. And yeah, I will protect this man with my last breath. Trust me, come at him and I will cut you. But him saying that about me, that's not patriarchy. That's what I want. So I really felt like I had to come on and say that we have to be really careful that we treat each other in this community as family if we want to be treated as family in this community. So,
and she's not my property. So, I don't view her as property. And I think that a lot of times we need to get out of these things of wanting to have the correct, right thing to say all the time. Because a lot of people in our communities done things out of the best intentions. It's easy for us in 2021 to sit back here and criticize what folks had did back in the 70s and 80s because because now we're woke, or we came to this, understanding that folks back then didn't have. But that doesn't mean that you can take that. That doesn't mean that you can minimize or disparage a lot of the positive stuff that they've done. That's why progress means constantly moving forward. That doesn't mean that we tear down the house of folks that built, that set the foundation back then. And I think we do too much of that in these circles.
Yeah, definitely appreciate all that was given today.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, before we log off, can I just give a solidarity reminder real quick? Today is Walkout Wednesday, so please do not go to McDonald's today. They are striking. McDonald's workers are striking today. Do not cross that picket line, okay?
That's right. That's right.
Patronize McDonald's at all today. The McDonald's workers are on strike today, so do not fuck with McDonald's today. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
With all due respect, you shouldn't go to McDonald's any day. You know what I mean? So,
all right. Well, some places McDonald's is all you got to eat, Kalanji. My bad. We all don't live in fancy ass Atlanta where the high school be going every
Well, getting back to the point as we wrap up, I want to say definitely thank you all for all the words and all the sharing, because of the fact that I think that is what today is all about. You know what I mean? Shout out to Malcolm, on his 96 born date, and I agree with Yeli. Malcolm is like one of my prophets. You know what I mean? Shout out to Yuri, you know what I mean, for the work that she put in. Ho Chi Minh. Shout out to Virginia Davis, who the universe saw fit for her to transition before her son Troy Davis was assassinated in 2011, and before her daughter, who was a very good sister of mine, Martina Correa, transitioned in the last in December of that year. I agree with one thing Yeli pointed out earlier. When we talk about defending women, it shouldn't be defending women. It should definitely be defending community, because of the fact that we're in this hellhole together. Yeah. And one thing that happens is we get caught up in the sidetracking of the slave, and we like, no, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's this one's fault. It's that one's fault. I hang with a whole lot of revolutionary sisters that are as the folks would say, a badass. You know what I mean? I know some sisters that I trust more with my entire self, because of the fact that I know that they're willing to do what they're willing to do. And I know some brothers that I don't trust, but I'm forced to be around. So thank you all. This is it's always perspective, but continue to live on the strength of us, because we'll get caught up and we'll be talking about shit that's not necessarily insignificant, but things that would divide us further. You know what I mean? We have to strengthen this nucleus, man. It's a difficult road.
Fire today, y'all. Didn't mean to cut you off, Kalanji. The chat was on fire, y'all. So we have right now over 200 people watching live. So thank you all.
We reached 208 people today live. This is we hit a record for the Remix Morning Show.
Yeah, the chat was hot.
Shout out to that. Also, I got to do this plug because of the fact that we have this thing later on. There's a Malcolm X Day program that the folks in Philly are doing. CMXD Philly. That will be broadcast live on Facebook between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. They have Ilyasa Shabazz, daughter of El Haj Malik Shabazz. She'll be on board. Jihad Abdul Muhammad from the chairman of the National Jericho Movement. He'll be on board. And I'll be on the panel as well. So check us out from 5 to 7 p.m. on and go to the either Black Power Media Twitter page or to IG if you want to check out for more information. We thank you all. We appreciate you all. Shout out to all the panelists, the hosts, the Remix Morning Show, the remixers in the chat room. That's right. The remixers are alive and well. Kamal's a hater, but it's all right. Shout out to our whole crew. We'll see y'all tomorrow, same place, same time.
Remix.
8 a.m. to 10 a.m. We
out.
Peace,
everybody.
Peace out.
See you. Deuces.